Next up, we have a really hot topic in messaging, the dial tone of mobile. On the back of the stunning acquisition of WhatsApp, in fact, Ovum reported this morning that WhatsApp cost the carrier industry $33 billion so far. And whether it allows you to sort of calibrate whether the 19 billion was a sensible price or not, but obviously negative ROI from the carriers puts that in pretty good contrast. So at Flurry, we see an incredible growth in the messaging category. 2012 to 2013, we've seen compound annual growth of sessions of 316%. And if you then blend that with social, it's still 203%. So it's one of those phenomenons that I was referring to in terms of the mobile era and this tech revolution that we're talking about. And consumers are gobbling up messaging like never before, all around the world. You know, in China, in Korea, in Japan, Kakao, Line, WeChat. It's just an incredibly fast-moving industry. So with that, I'd like to welcome up on stage Mike Isaac from Recode. If you don't follow him on Twitter, @MikeIsaac, please do so. Incredibly entertaining guy to follow. So Mike, please come up on stage. Welcome you and the panelists. Give them a big hand. Hey, thanks. Thank you.
All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Mike Isaac. I work for Recode, which you may or may not know used to be all things D until 4 months ago, I guess. So I cover social and Facebook and Twitter, and now messaging companies. So before we get started, I just want to go down the line and have everyone just sort of introduce themselves real quick. Al?
Yeah. Al Khalil, Skype product marketing manager. I run mobile monetization.
I'm Julian Deco. I work for a company called TextMe. We're one of those apps. I'm in charge of BD and everything money. I'm pretty much the only business guy on our team. And I used to be at Skype for a long time before that. So.
I'm Mike Downey. I run business development and partnerships at Whisper.
I'm Kakul Srivastava. I work at a company called Yahoo. Before that, I was the CEO and founder of a company called Flurry Incorporated, and we built messaging apps for people at work.
Okay, cool. So we're talking a little bit about WhatsApp acquisition and things like that. And I just have sort of a basic question here. Why did it take the WhatsApp acquisition for, I guess, like the United States to realize that messaging was such a giant thing that we sort of take for granted, right? Like I think in the rest of the world, you know, outside of the US, WhatsApp was obviously a thing. You know, these other alternative messaging apps are obviously a thing. What are we just so addicted to SMS right now that we just don't think about this at all? Or, you know, why did it take Mark Zuckerberg writing a giant check to make this actually a thing?
I mean, I'll jump in if you want.
Yeah.
I think there were several factors. One is WhatsApp was pretty secretive about their numbers. Like every now and then you have stats coming out about X billions of messages sent that day. But it was very hard to basically reconstruct the one number that really mattered, which was the number of daily actives. I had no idea. I knew it was a big number, but I couldn't really tell you if it was 100, 200, 300, and then it turned out to be 450, which for any possible business you're in is a gigantic number.
Yeah.
So I think first, very few people knew the actual number. Zuck probably did. And once you realize this number, if you're in this business, you know, it's jaw-dropping.
Right.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, I was at Skype, and I saw Skype becoming #1 in the App Store on the first day. We've never seen numbers like this in any business. So I think that was one. And second, it took someone to have the courage to look at this for what it is, which is a gigantic mobile company who's actually making some money, and is actually not only big and growing fast, but keeps growing faster and faster and faster and faster. And the last thing was the ratio. We're all in the same business, and when we look at our KPIs, my KPIs are probably different from anybody else, But everyone wonders, everyone looks at, say, daily over monthly.
Yep.
It's always a good health ratio of how good your app does, whatever the app does, by the way. And their ratio is unbelievable.
Yep. Yep.
So for me, when I saw the stats and then I saw the price, I didn't go like, okay, makes perfect sense, but I realized they were buying something that was very unique. And just like for everything unique, the price is just what someone is willing to pay for it. Just like if I sell my house. So.
I would add one more thing to that. I think to some extent this is representative of the fact that the United States has been kind of behind on the mobile sort of revolution from the beginning. You know, mobile took off much more in Asia and Europe than it did here for years and years. And I think that continues to be sort of a challenge for us when we think about innovation. I mean, I think WhatsApp grew primarily in Europe first before it grew, you know, here, and still it's much more of a huge phenomenon out there. Similarly, WeChat is far a larger phenomenon in China than anything similar here.
I'm assuming like the different rates for data in domestically versus internationally had quite something to do that. What about Skype? Did you guys sort of, I mean, Skype is obviously a big international player. Did you guys sort of see this coming, or was this sort of out of the blue too, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of great momentum on Skype, specifically on mobile. In the last year, more than half of Skype users come to Skype via mobile, either tablets or mobile devices. So it's been tremendous growth, specifically on mobile, and it's still, I mean, the market is still growing. Looking at the devices shipment next year, 1.8 billion devices going to market. So it gets more and more users connected, and the communication over IP, specifically in markets where SMS pricing is still high, or data plans are still, expensive. So for these markets, alternative communication such as over IP, either texting or voice or video calls is becoming more and more attractive for users.
Right on. Right on. I want to hear what the Whisper guy thinks on this.
I'm not even sure we're a messaging app.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
messaging is a part of Whisper, but it's certainly not the dial tone
Sure.
of Whisper. Like personally, I don't direct message. I find it terrifying as a married father of two.
Wait, why?
On the app, but it's also it's just a piece of the puzzle. Like when we think about messaging, there's definitely a high correlation between people that use the direct messaging aspect of Whisper and people that become part of our core audience. So there's glue there, but it's an option. Like you don't have to engage in the direct messaging. Like people use it, Whisper, in a variety of different ways.
Sure.
And in terms of messaging, one of the primary ones is around nearby and meeting people and, you know, hooking up and actually, you know, meeting people in the real world. But it's all a choice, right? Whether or not you want that direct kind of interaction. So I'm not exactly sure that messaging is part of it, but I don't think it's at our very heart.
That actually gets a really good point. For those of you, I mean, I'm sure everyone knows, but Whisper is primarily, you know, anonymous sharing, and then there's a messaging component built into it. But the the idea that messaging seems to be, it can be a standalone thing, but it also seems to be sort of a core function or a peripheral function of a lot of these social apps that may have not had it before, right? So I think of Twitter, which, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, under various product management regimes, there was a decision to downplay messaging, and now they woke up and realized that they screwed up big time, and they need to like put it in there. So now you see that in there. Do you think this is sort of, do you think messaging is kind of maybe a table stakes thing for a lot of apps that do you have to have that in there, or is it?
Absolutely.
I mean,
I think you have to have it. And if you're in social, because it's so immediate, it's so real time, you get that immediate feedback of another human being on the other end. So I think it's definitely table stakes if you want to build a big social community, for sure.
I mean, what we found was messaging was a key sort of engagement driver. So, you know, you have the content that you explore, but you don't truly form, you know, sort of engagement with the app unless you have real relationships with other people in there. And I think that's what messaging allows you to do.
interesting.
I have a slightly different opinion on this. I mean, just like you, Mike, you said, we're mixing a lot of different things into the messaging category. Across the panel, I would argue we're in very different businesses. We're used for different reasons by our users. In my view, I don't compete with any of those guys. The truth is, I only compete to earn the right to be used versus the native app. That's my competition. Every one of my users doesn't
Very
think,
interesting.
oh, I'm going to use Yahoo Messenger, Whisper, or TextMe, and one versus the other. They think, do I make a normal call, or do I use TextMe? And that's the way we think about building the product. So, and the way we think about this is we can do, first, I mean, we think if you step back and you look at what happened over the last few years, like, the phone I have in my pocket is incredible. It does incredible things. I can watch billions of films, I can take stunning photos, I can have Google Earth. There's all those amazing things I can do on it. The one thing that hasn't changed is the freaking telephone.
Yep.
And I would argue the telephone on my Nokia phone 10 years ago was easier to use than the one on my Android phone today. And by the way, the price hasn't changed all that much. It's still very expensive and cumbersome and all that stuff. So in our view, we're in the business of making the phone smart.
Sure.
On a smartphone, which is kind of ironic.
So that's very interesting. Do you think that there's like room for? I feel like there's two theories here. There's one where maybe I want to do all of my messaging in one specific location, right? There's like, I think Zuckerberg even would ascribe to like, they want Facebook Messenger to be much more of a central area. So forget SMS, forget a lot of other sort of options, right? Is that what people want, or do you see people sort of like segmenting, okay, I'm going to do Twitter DMs for this, I'm going to do Facebook messages for this, I'm going to do SMS for this, I'm very curious as to how user behavior.
I mean, a few days ago we ran like a sample group. We invited 50 users to our office and we looked at them. And we asked them very stupid questions about what they use, and we looked at their phones and everything. First, I mean, there's no switching cost, none. So users have all those apps, and if we think we're going to convince them to have only one, we're just wrong. They'll stop when they have no more space on their phone. Literally. Until then, they won't remove any of us, and they'll use all of us. And I'll give you examples. Some people tell me, I use TextMe because you give me another number. And I'm a 25-year-old woman who uses a dating site every now and then, and I will never give away my real number. So the real value is actually that number for me. And then we have people tell me, my girlfriend is in Pakistan, I save money by using you when I call her. And then we have parents telling us, I use us because you do video chat. Right. And for all those people, like, they take your product and they see an element of value that's right for them, right. And that's why they use it. Okay. And I think the idea of forcing everyone to use just one thing, first, I think it's not what people want, and I think it's just wrong. It's just I think
there's going to be a lot of varieties of messaging, lots of flavors. Like the term messaging, it's about the context that the app provides, whether it's anonymous messaging on Whisper, or you're messaging in QuizUp while you're playing a game, or you're messaging on Tinder, or whatever it is. It's like the term messaging is going to have all these, derivatives. So just, thinking of it as just one kind of utility, I don't think does it justice for what it actually is.
That's a good point. I think context is like really important here. Like I'm not gonna. There are certain things I'm going to send through Facebook Messenger versus WhatsApp versus something like that, right? So I'm just very curious. I feel like, and maybe maybe I'm totally wrong, but I just feel like people are trying to own it a lot of the time, or at least certain players are trying to own it more than others. What about Skype?
I totally agree with Julien and Mike on there's no single app that's going to drive all engagement. It's different context, different app, different ways of engaging with friends. Like we see Skype tend to be more the personal, intimate conversation with family and the close ones, and we kind of built Skype experience consistently with elegant UI and easy to use, familiar interface from your phone, tablets, desktop, to most recently with the Xbox One experience on the big TV screen. It's really, conversations tend to start on a mobile and then escalate on the different screens, like more of a video conference or a voice conference. Voice chat versus like you can see more of snacking on other apps. So it's really the context of your social circles. It's really important in consumer minds.
Okay.
I mean, I just want to add to that. I think what Facebook has learned is that there is not going to be one social graph that unites them all. And this growth of messaging is really people saying, actually, I've got my circles of friends, and I've got some friends who I communicate with in WeChat, like my family in China. I've got my close connections who I'll use for Skype or often in the workplace, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you've got your Twitter network, and you'll use DMs for that. And it's really about the fragmentation of the social graph. That's what I think we're seeing.
Okay. No, that's a really great point.
And one last point I'd say is, every time I hear someone tell me we gonna own this thing, I get very worried. Last time I heard it was someone from BlackBerry telling me we own email and mobile.
Poor BlackBerry.
so-
They're just like so easy to kick.
No, it's true. They were saying this
They
publicly.
could have been
in a
huge
meeting.
too, right? BBM was like a
But
thing.
we don't own anything.
In this
I don't
space.
own anything. No one does. Not even Jan Koum owns anything.
Yeah.
We earn the right to serve our users every day. That's what we do. And I would also say that there's some countries where what I'm saying is wrong. You go to Spain. If you don't like WhatsApp, you're forced to use it. If you go to Korea and you don't like Kakao Talk, guess what? You're going to use it.
Right.
But it's very geographical, and only a few places you're forced to use the one app, which is kind of your line in Japan is your identity. Whether you like Line or not,
Right.
you're using it. I can't launch TextMe in Japan and convince people to switch. They're going to laugh at me.
So do you just write these? That's a great point. Like I'm very curious as to if we get out of the United States for a second, which I don't think has been won, right? And whether or not you agree it can be won. Like, do you just cede territory in these other countries? It's like, all right, WeChat's China, like Kakao is South Korea, Japan is like, what do you do there? I mean, do you just say this is done? Or
No, I think the big guys should talk because they have more to say on that topic. But for us, as we have 25 million people using our app, so it's big, but it's small in some ways. We think about this as, if I want to exist in Spain, I need to complement WhatsApp. If I can't complement WhatsApp, I'm not even going to bother.
Yep.
If I ever enter Korea, I need to be able to say someone use Kakao and TextMe together, and you'll have a good experience. Otherwise, that's why I haven't launched in Korea with Korean numbers yet, because I haven't figured out how to do this. I'd be curious to know what Kakao has to say about this.
I think that market dominance, sort of geographically based market dominance, is absolutely a factor. And I think from a tactical perspective, you do sort of fight each country on its own. Having said that, I think the world it's a one connected world. And ultimately, we saw, Orkut was absolutely dominated Brazil. There was no way there was any room for any other player except for Orkut. And then Facebook came, and it worked because it connected people who were outside of Brazil with Brazilians. And I think that's just the world we live in.
And just the same thing just happened in the Ukraine last month.
yeah, sure.
Like the Ukraine was to be a Vkontakte country. It's now officially a Facebook country and a Skype country, I think. So those things can change. Maybe someday Whisper will be the biggest messaging app in Japan. It could change, but if you don't take this geographical lens to look at the landscape, I think you miss the big picture.
I think that there's a lot of, so I think of cultural norms in these countries too, and how that sort of plays into the type of product that you have, right? So I think that so if you look at like Kakao or WeChat or some of these other apps, like they're kind of, for my taste at least, they're kind of like all over the place. There's a lot of crap in there. There's a lot of things like flowing through there. But it really works in these countries, and people obviously like there's a lot of money there. Like I think WeChat reported some hundreds of millions of dollars or something. How do you think about that in terms of what y'all make and how to enter these other markets? Like it doesn't seem like you can just place one thing and have it work everywhere.
Like at Whisper, we look at kind of repressed cultures. Where
repressed culture?
Yeah, where anonymity is going to be just a relief. Like it's like,
that.
wow, I can get this out in a safe way, in a form that I've never had access to
Right.
You guys must have a lot
before.
of users in the U.S. Just kidding.
We're primarily U.S. But
I was going to say, yeah, where in the U.S. is the most repressed, actually? Now I'm very curious.
we could actually pull data on that.
Could
if
you?
you had certain
really-
terms that you
I
wanted
have
to
some
look
guesses.
at for
I totally have
repression,
some guesses.
you know.
Yeah.
But that's one of the ways we look at it in terms of our international expansion, which are the kind of cultures that we think an anonymous social network is really going to resonate, and then they're going to just run with it and create all the content in those countries. And so that's part of the filter, the lens that we're looking at as we're localizing the app into other countries.
In our case, for example, we're a bunch of software people and telecom people, so we think about pricing and we try to understand telecom, and we get into places where we can be of some use. Like we launched the UK in October last year with like local phone numbers and free SMS, for example, because it had never been done, and there was a lot of people in prepaid who were very constrained in their use of telephony. So finally, you give them a product where you can be on 3 or T-Mobile in the UK on a £10 plan and suddenly send 6,000 SMS a day if you feel like. So in our case, it's very tactical and pricing driven. And then you ask yourself, what do you need to change? And for the UK, we changed the product a lot, actually. It looks the same, but the pricing is different, the way you earn, a lot of stuff is different, and it will be different in the next countries we launch as well.
Sure. Skype, I feel like, has a little bit of different position here, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to compete in markets where you see Kakao and Line dominance in their primarily market, like in Japan.
Yeah.
It's the network effect. It's, you use the app where your friends are. We have the most engaging way of expressing yourself culturally. The culture has a lot to do with it. I mean, the emoticons and the animation that goes beyond the text. I think it's huge in Asia, and I think it's challenging for Skype to compete in these markets. If we continue on listening to consumers' feedback and continue evolving the experience to account for kind of local-based kind of cultural, how to engage with media and how to engage with messaging.
I mean, I have an old Skype story about this, which is interesting. Like, at the time, like Russia and the Ukraine were pretty big countries for Skype when I was there, and I don't know why we could never get Skype out to scale the way we wanted to, until like someone who was local in our team said, we should let people buy credits at the ATM. And everyone around the room went like, what are you talking about? This is Skype, like we're a tech company. And we ended up doing the deal so that people could go to the ATM with their card and buy a voucher for Skype credits. And that was a huge success. It was one example of something where an American or a French person like me thinking about this will never get it until someone local tells me, no, forget about that stuff. Like PayPal doesn't matter. This is the way to do this. And that was for payment, but it applies to many. I'm sure Whisper in the Emirates will be very different from Whisper in the US. And that's all the subtleties which make the product management fun, I think, and interesting. So.
Do you have anything? So I'm just so curious. I want to go into anonymity stuff in a minute because that's a whole other thing, which is a lot of fun. But let's talk about cultural norms and another sort of naughty word for Silicon Valley, which is like actually making money, monetization. And like obviously there are different. Y'all are in different places in this process, but I feel like different companies can do different things, and I wonder if those models will transfer. So let's look at Asia again, and they have sort of app discovery or app distribution methods inside of these apps, right? So like games, I believe, is big for, I don't know, WeChat or Kakao or something like that, but that's one sort of way they're monetizing. At the same time, I don't know if you can do that here, right? I don't know if like Facebook could just take that and plop it on there and everyone would be cool with finding the next stupid Candy Crush or whatever, right? Like, how do you feel like there's the divide there translates, or does it even translate,
So, I mean, I'll take it for Whisper. Like we have the ability to charge for messaging. Like it's a switch where it's an in-app purchase, and so we can charge you, and we've tested it, but we're not doing that because we're just all about growth, and we want people to use it. So we've kind of, is messaging a premium enough and desirable enough feature within the app? We've opted not to do it, but so that's an option. And then for us, obviously, market advertising, it feels like a natural branding medium. Whisper does, and we're approached by brands and movie marketers and television marketers all the time that want to test things in the form of whispers. Internally, they don't even let the BD guys talk to the developers. We're like not focusing on monetization at all right now, but it's frustrating because it's such a unique product for us, and brands are looking to kind of just clean up imagery on Whisper. Like the content is being created on such scale now, and using big blue chip brands from image feeds, that now that's one of the products that becomes interesting, just shaping the images, the backgrounds of Whisper. But for us, it's definitely kind of experimental and exploratory, but there's signal for us right now in terms of, this seems like it could be an interesting direction for us to go.
You guys are really interesting too, because I wonder how do you make money off of anonymous users, and like, can you just, I'm sure there are background things that I'm not getting nuance of, but like, you just plop an ad in there, that...
No, we're not plopping any ads at this point.
That's my coined term, by the way, plopping ads.
I'll give you an example. So we did a campaign, a partnership with this movie by Universal Pictures called Endless Love.
Okay.
That came out on Valentine's Day. Mm-hmm. And we worked with them to come up with, what are the themes of this movie, right? It was like dating bad boys and loss of innocence and disapproving parents. And we came up with a series of whispers and let the community just rip with it. These are all on background images from the movie. So one of the whispers was, what are 3 words to describe your first relationship ever? Right. And the whisper community generated, like in the first day, something like 10,000 whispers of describing their first relationship in 3 words. So the marketer ends up with this huge body of content on branded backgrounds from their movie or from their property. And the thing that's interesting, it comes back with data, meaning which has been hearted the most and which has been replied the most. So that's signal in terms of what they can push into other social media channels. So that's kind of what monetization looks like on Whisper in its current form.
I think it's interesting because we took a radically different approach. Like, we decided to never raise money the day we started. So we self-funded everything. We could only spend when we made money. So from day one, we were talking with my engineers about, this is how we're going to make money. And that's a fundamental difference. And I'm not saying I'm right and you're wrong. I'm just saying there are different ways to try to get to the same point. We wanted to be independent and control our destiny for as long as we could. And second, we build monetization as a feature. And we think about this. When people ask me how many features does TextMe have, I'd argue 3. We have texting, calling, and credits. And we treat all 3 equal. My engineers spend as much time on credits, and we launched native ads last week. Like, it was a big deal for my team. They're proud of showing the ads, which to me is great, because it means we're all going to get into the same place where we build businesses and we want to make money, and we want our investors to make money, and we want our employees to make money. It's a function of how soon do we start talking about this. And our approach has been, let's talk about it from the first day, because ads is hard. It takes a lot of iteration, and you need to treat it as a product and test and learn and find the right. There's all those stuff. It's not like, I don't believe you can build something great and then wake up one day and say, okay, done, I'm putting ads on this thing, and this is $1 billion business.
I don't think ads have to be detrimental to the user
Absolutely,
experience. So, like, we're looking at it as content.
Right.
Like, people have relationships with brands and profess their love for Starburst or Taco Bell.
Right.
No, it happens all the time.
Be careful on your Taco Bell love. But this is a question, actually. So BuzzFeed actually comes up against a similar issue, though, which is like, brands don't always get social media or how to create an ad that people care about, or like aren't like, oh, you stupid, whatever, Procter & Gamble, you're coming down on me in my service, and this is totally shitty, and I don't want to see this in my feed, right? Do you have to like hire a sales force or like people to train these companies to do this? Like, or are there agencies that are sort of starting to figure this out? I'm just wondering, like, when that sort of when these brands can catch up to that sort of these ad mediums, essentially, these new mediums.
Yeah, we look at it as a content function. Mm-hmm. So we have people on the content team that actually have approval right over anything that will run, and they know what is going to elicit the appropriate and positive response from the Whisper community. So it's really more of an editorial content lens.
Does Neatzon work on that?
What's that?
Does Neatzon work on that?
No, Neatzon doesn't work on that. He works
Neatzon
on
Zimmerman is former Gawker traffic guru, is what he was called. He was like the dude that got like, I don't even know what percent of Gawker's traffic, but it was crazy.
Yeah.
And now Whisper hired him, what was it, a few months ago, right?
Yeah, he's the editor-in-chief is his title, and what he does is he packages stories based on whispers. So for example, with BuzzFeed, they run stories that tie themes from Whisper together. An example is like, confessions of dorm life, right? And then there's a series of whispers tying it together, or, stories of productive marijuana smokers or something like that. There's all these crazy varieties of content.
420 was just like last weekend, too.
Yeah, there was a big story on that. Weedster, they were calling it.
Right, right.
But that's what Neatzon does, is he's packaging those for publishers for distribution as kind of an editorial approach.
Right on.
Just one thing to add to that on the advertising. I mean, as long as the advertising experience is built around consumer experiences, I think it's not about shoveling a 320 by 50 banner ad on a mobile screen. It's how to build that user engagement experience around targetable ads. Relevance is key in advertising, and specifically in mobile, where we can target against location, you can target against intent. And when you look at Skype within the Microsoft overall advertising experience, we kind of, that's the current challenge yet, an opportunity to build those experiences that are user-centric, where the experience goes from Skype to Xbox or Outlook or MSN, and we target those consumers with users with ads that are relevant to what they're doing on each of these platforms. So I think advertising, it's really as long as it's built around it's more consumer centric. I think it drives benefits for both advertisers and consumers.
I think this generation of messaging, sort of messaging version 2, is it's coming into a much more fertile monetization field. I think to some extent people are much more comfortable paying for things on mobile than they ever have been before, and perhaps they're more comfortable even with paying for things than they are with advertising. I think there's certainly an opportunity to do advertising better. We're very much at the beginning of that. With targeting, with more sensory information, situational information from mobile devices, to make that targeting even better. But I think people are very comfortable paying for premium services on mobile. They're very comfortable with in-app purchases. So the world is sort of our oyster when it comes to monetization, I think, this time around.
That's interesting. And it's just sort of this interesting divide now between, or essentially like what that looks like, right? I think I read something this morning that Google wants to get into the mobile app install ads in search now, right? And Facebook obviously has done very well on that, and Twitter is now jumping into that. Sorry?
And Twitter last week.
Twitter is launching that. Yeah. They're doing that. It seems like everyone's sort of catching on to this thing, right?
I think it's interesting because I serve those advertisers every day. They're my customers in my job, and there's been sort of phases of evolution in the last, and this stuff is moving all the time very fast. Like people, app installs and Facebook launched 9 months ago. This is probably a $3 billion business for one company. When Twitter launches, if they get it right on Twitter and Mopub, this will be in the tens of millions overnight, guaranteed. I've seen the ads; those will do well, guaranteed. And then you got
Twitter's Mopub ads?
Yeah, the app install equivalent of what Facebook has that Twitter is launching will do well. It's a question of how long it will take. It will convert well and be a nice experience for users. I think those ads are actually quite beautiful. But then when you think about where the money is in advertising, the money is, yes, it's with app developers, but we're tiny compared to the big pot, which is the Coke and Nike and all those guys. We're right now just don't spend all that much on mobile. And last week we launched an experiment in the UK where we launched a video section in the page to earn credits, where we had Lexus and Nike, and it took us a year to convince those brands and find a way so they were comfortable. And it was an stunning experience for the brand, for our users, everyone, because it was the first time those brands were getting into the messaging space together. So what I hope is that more and more young kids look at messaging and say, I'm going to be on the money side with my startup, and I'm going to build a great monetization tool because it's cool, it's exciting, it's fun. So that, I mean, I love Silicon Valley for what it is. People get a lot of money to start, but we're all in the business of doing business.
Right.
And the sooner engineers and designers get excited about ads and or in apps or whatever dating, whatever business cases there is, the faster we'll all scale as a category. And so I hope someday, you know, OTTs can buy operators and can buy e-commerce sites. But for this to happen, we collectively need to learn how to make money at very large scale. So.
So I wanted to see if anyone actually in the audience has questions or to think of them, but I'm not sure where the microphone person is. Oh, someone's running up, or maybe not. Oh, there's a guy right there. Yeah, let's do a question real quick, and then I have a few more. Uh-oh. Do you want to just ask me, and then I'll repeat it?
Yeah, so there's a massive buzz right now, which is growth hacking. When you say growth hacking, everyone is excited. So could someone share what's the best thing that they used as the main growth hacking thing for their application, if they want to share?
Yeah, thank you. The question is on growth hacking, which I think is like one of my favorite topics to hate on because it seems like a trick a lot of the time, or it seems like a sort of illusion that you get all this momentum, but at the same time, how long are these people going to stick around, right? Sure. So I'm curious as to y'all's thoughts on I mean, is it a sustainable practice, or am I understanding this incorrectly, you know? And what do you do? If you want to give away your secret sauce.
I won't give away anything secretive, but what I would say is people call growth hacking two very different things. There's virality, which is very hard to do well, and few people know how to do this well. Mm-hmm. And then there's spam. And those two things are fundamentally different. One helps the user, the other one hurts the user and the person who receives the invites or the message. And to me, like, if you mix those two things, it's horrible for the guys doing the good work. I'll give you one example of one thing you can see in the app that we do. One of the great value of our app is that you don't need your friends to be on it. So you install TextMe, you can text anyone in the world without forcing them to install TextMe. So that helps us and that hurts us because there's no network effects. The network effects sort of work against us, if you will. But one thing we do is for example, last month we launched the ability to send stickers via SMS. So I send you a sticker for Easter. It's a nice little photo. We display it on the recipient phone, and then there's a couple of triggers telling you want to do the same, get TextMe. Mm-hmm. I call this growth hacking done well, because I'm not screwing anyone, and the sender and the receiver are pretty happy and they like what I do. If I force the sender to invite via SMS the whole contact list, I become the bad guy, and I think I hurt all of us. And I think there's a lot of stuff going on that are really bad. Yeah. And in some ways, my app only has 20 million plus users, but I'm proud of every one of them. And I have none to be ashamed of. And that keeps me happy in the morning. And
well, you're not going to get a Valleywag article like with a bunch of people pissed off that I just got a text message at 4 in the morning from your app or something, right?
And to me, some clever stuff were done really early with guys like Social Cam, and they cracked some very cool things and some great ideas on Facebook. But
although they had a good exit,
particularly after WhatsApp, like everyone is like, "Oh my God, I've got to have 50 million users to have something."
Right.
And I think it's wrong. Like, you earn your way into growth by doing good work that people tell their friends, get this app. Or I discovered Whisper not because I got an invite, because someone told me it's beautiful, so I got it.
Yeah. How did Whisper how do you guys look at this? I mean, you have a very different approach. It's very content focused too, right? So
yeah, we can't leverage address book or social graph because we're anonymous. Right. So we have to look at, a lot of different alternative ways to, generate word of mouth and awareness for the app. I think growth hacking, it feels like a blanket term, where it's just like, it's anything that's not a traditional method of user acquisition, at least the way they use it, it's like, all right, let's do some growth hacking. Let's like brainstorming ideas and ways to get new users.
But the one thing I would say, which is different in the world today than it was 3 years ago when I was still at Skype, is that we do this mathematically. So like we measure the number of SMS that are sent, the attachment, the click-through rates, and we have the designers fine-tune the product and the viral links, and we play with this whole. So we do this scientifically as well as we can, and I think most people do now, which is very different from just old marketing, if you will. But that's true for all the good companies in our space, I think.
Yeah, we rely on the content. I'm sorry.
No,
You're going to go?
No, please.
Like the idea behind Whisper is that by removing personal identity and ego, you create a more authentic and honest social media experience. Therefore, the content becomes more compelling than what you might see on a legacy platform. And that's played out, right? That's people come to it because, oh, have you seen, Whisper? It's nice to look at, and the kind of posts that you see aren't like anything you see on the standard networks. And that also plays into kind of the relationships that we have with publishers like Huffington Post, like BuzzFeed, because they're more willing to package stories based on whispers because they are more authentic in a lot of ways. And then we're looking at other things too, like we're doing live events with Whisper, where we're doing Whisper screens when people can whisper in real time throughout events. We have to be more innovative about how we get out there because we don't get the same viral effects that standard social networks get. But so we have to forge our own path in this white space that is anonymity.
I can only imagine what people in this audience would be whispering about right now. It'd probably be like, look at that guy's ugly ass shoes or something. But I'm curious, Kako, if you have,
Yeah.
no, yours are very nice. Mine
Here,
are like
thanks.
$50. Yes.
They're not that much more expensive. Julian made a very important and interesting point earlier, where we have to sort of own up to making money, and it's like okay to make money. I think it's also okay to not grow as fast as Facebook or 10 times as fast as, whatever. I think we're a little bit addicted to growth numbers, and it's like crack. And that crack leads to some really, really bad behaviors around the virality, around the spam, et cetera. And we have to kind of say no and get creative in terms of how we get out there. I think the industry will be healthier for it, and user experiences will be far healthier for it. It's too easy to growth hack your way to big numbers right now. You just pay a lot of money.
I agree, and I think particularly if you look at the WhatsApp example, I mean, WhatsApp is the father of us all now. We all, this is it. This is as good as anything can get in our space, and I respect what they've done because it's extremely simple. They respected their users, and they grew because their product was the best. WhatsApp is the best messaging product in the world, heads down, I would argue. The simplest one, the easiest to use, to sign up for. So for me, I'm driving for my company to become something which is like this, simple, and that people are proud of showing their friends when they have no interest to do so. And I agree with you, it takes time. It takes time and effort and sweat.
I think the one thing, we have to stop, unfortunately. I wanted to get into the venture financing and how much that involves growth hacking. Like, there's pressure, right? Like, if you have hundreds of millions of dollars, tens of millions, you have to put up numbers, right? But the one takeaway you should do today is don't do crack. Just grow organically. Thank you very much.
Thank you.